Hi, I'm Judy Tyabji. Thanks very much for joining us today. Today it's going to be a lighter subject, but I think one that you'll find has a whole plethora of different subjects that we'll be covering. We're looking under the subject of the arts. As you know, we've talked to artists, musicians, and other people in the past, including on the subject of arts cutbacks. Today we're returning to a subject we've talked about before. We're talking about authors, and we have with us 4 BC authors, and we're also profiling 2 others in stories produced by Lee Mackenzie. And I think what you'll find is that British Columbia has quite a depth of talent, and that these people actually have had some very interesting lives, as well as being people who've brought stories forward and put life into these lives on the printed word. And first we're going to introduce you to Cyril Shelford. Now this is someone you might know already because he used to be in the BC government. But Cyril Shelford has written a book called From War to Wilderness, and Lee Mackenzie talked to him the other day. Let's take a look.
After tea was to go out.
Former Social Credit Cabinet Minister Cyril Shelford has written several books since he gave up a life of politics, and his latest is called War to Wilderness. It chronicles the adventures and challenges faced by his father, Jack Shelford, in the First World War, and then in the wilds of the wilderness of the west coast of Canada.
He got to hate war so much that he just wanted to get away from all of it, which I don't blame him, because I was in World War II for 6 years. And so he left and went home, but all of this time he was writing letters to his mother, dad, sisters, and brothers in England, which was very fortunate for me, or I'd have never been able to have written this book. Some of these letters are even worse than this one, and so I had to read and reread, but you can finally get them together to put the story together. And I thought, first of all, I should put them together for my family. But then people were saying, well, we liked your other 3 books, why don't you put it together as a book for all of us? Which I did, and that's how it came about.
Near the turn of the century, Jack Shelford explored the BC coast and Alaska, and in one letter he tells of his new wife's reaction to her wilderness home.
My mother's safe. He stood there without saying a word for at least 5 minutes. Then she said, "This is the most beautiful sight I've ever seen, and when facing difficulty in the life ahead, I can always walk up to this spot and remind myself how fortunate we are to live in the most beautiful place on earth. This will give me strength to face all the difficult problems that no doubt both of us will have to face in such an isolated area as this."
Now, if you've ever written a book, or if you've thought about writing a book, this is a good time to actually talk to some authors about experiences you might anticipate or that you might be having. Back after a quick break with your calls and 4 authors from BC.
America, millions of you have skinny hair. Stop hiding it.
From Conair Volume Control, you've got the Big Curl Setter. 5 soft surface jumbo rollers with super clips go from skinny to full of body.
Nobody's bigger in hair than Conair.
America, millions of you have skinny hair. Well, stop hiding it. From Conair, get the Big Curls Hot Air Curling Iron and Brush. Styles as it dries, brushes in volume. Nobody's bigger in hair than Conair.
Chintz & Company. Everything you'll want to stay home with.
You're making a list, you're checking it twice. We got the right gift at just the right price. Do your list for less at the Bay.
It's the Bay's biggest luggage event ever, with 30 to 40% savings on quality brand names like American Tourister, Atlantic, Oscar de la Renta, Chow, and Samsonite. Pack in the savings on all the latest luggage styles at the Bay.
Do your list for less at the Bay.
Back in 1886, Frederick June and his brother Arthur started one of the first tenting and outdoor stores on Vancouver Island. Since then, we've learned a lot about keeping our customers safe, warm, and comfortable in the great outdoors with quality outdoor apparel, hiking boots, sleeping bags, tents, and a wide range of great year-round camping gear. Because after all, great outdoor clothing isn't just for the great outdoors.
Shop at June Brothers for Boxing Day prices all through December.
The book industry in British Columbia is alive and well. There are many authors contributing to all kinds of different ventures, whether it's nonfiction, fiction, if it's autobiographies, biographies, or whatever you want to talk about, it's happening in BC, but they don't always get the attention that we see when we have like the top 10 New York Times bestsellers list and all that kind of stuff that we can easily buy everywhere. And what we have 4 authors with us. We're going to start with 2, and then halfway through the show we'll switch. And so you'll see, don't get confused, they're all here now. We'll have to. We're going to start Barry Mathias. Now, you're an English professor.
That's right.
At Camosun College.
I am, yes.
Okay. And Lorraine Blashill, and I have to apologize, I thought, okay, you've written 1 book here, but you've actually, it's your 6th book.
Yeah, they were all basically historical nonfiction.
Okay. I'm going to start with you, Barry. And first of all, I want to actually show your book over here. Now, The Power in the Dark, this is not what one would expect from an English professor at Camosun College. It's a fictional departure. It's something that, well, why don't you tell us quickly what it is and how on earth you write it if you're an English prof? Or maybe that's why you write it.
Well, that might very well be the case. I don't think it's an impediment. But yes, it's an historic fantasy. It's based in the year 1112, and it's the first of a trilogy.
Okay.
And I got the ideas from lots of different things that have happened in my life, and also the sort of things you read and see.
Right.
And
the things like the Arthurian legends.
Oh, very much that, yes. But being an English instructor doesn't really get in the way at all.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I just, when I was reading through it, I thought if I were one of your students, I'd have to tease you about it. You know.
Would you? That's
I
very
would
interesting.
say, oh, come on, where do you come up with these
I must therefore
ideas?
have the politest and most supportive students that there are.
In this, you deal with sorcery and magic and sort of Celtic folklore. There's
Yes.
very, very vivid imagery.
Right.
Do you think there's a return to interest in that kind of thing?
I think there probably is. You can see a lot of people, like Jack White, for instance, a lot of interest in those sorts of books at the moment. And I think it's possibly because of television.
Oh, hey, there you go. Somebody's saying something nice about television's influence. That's kind of nice.
No, actually, it wasn't nice.
Oh, I see.
It's the fact that people are too much aware. I mean, they can see life on the moon.
Oh, so they're looking
instantly.
for fantasy.
Right.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
A sort of return to something where maybe life was still, what should we say, wonderful.
I thought you were saying we were provoking them to go further. Lorraine Blashill, I want to bring you into this. Now, you've written a book, Remembering the 50s, and I have to tell you, it's interesting because I didn't think that I would be interested in it because it seemed like, oh, remembering the 50s, I don't know anything about it. I love the way you've put it together. First of all, tell us what it is.
Well, it's basically the reminiscences of 43, 44 people that about growing up in the 1950s in Western Canada.
Which right away you go, oh yeah, well that'll be interesting, you know. But actually you've got little anecdotes, and they're roughly a page each. So even for those of us who grew up with Gilligan's Island, it's very easy to read. And they're talking about their little communities and some of their experiences. And how did you find them? Because they're all over the place.
Yeah, I concentrated on Western Canada. In order to do that, I had to find people I felt that represented the demographics and the cultural and religious organizations that they belonged to and so on. So I talked to friends and relatives, and I interviewed them and had them recommend people, and I sent letters to the editor to a number of Western Canadian newspapers, and got some interesting replies.
And in that letter to the editor, it was like, hi, my name's Lorraine Blashill, and I'm writing a book about remembering the 50s.
Exactly.
Do you have an interesting story?
Yeah.
Now, you kind of make some political statements when you start your book about the 50s versus today, sort of the black and white kind of predictable era versus sort of the free fall we have right now. Right now, the kinds of comments you make are very similar to what I hear every day when we open the phone lines on social issues. Was that a concept that evolved, or was that something that you started off with?
It evolved very much just in talking to all the people, because in the last chapter of the book, which was something that I added in about the middle, because all of a sudden people were talking about what has changed and what shouldn't have changed, and comparing the 50s to their lives today. And that's where we began to talk a lot about what it was like and what we miss, and how, well, basically it was something that happened that won't be in our lives again.
Now, in your case, as you approached 50 years old, as you say in your book, suddenly you were without a job.
Yeah.
And you expected to, because you grew up in the 50s and everybody would just sort of work until you retire, and then you were downsized.
That's right. And not unlike a whole lot of other people my age.
Right.
And this is our reality in the 90s, and quite different from the 50s.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go to the phone lines, and I guess if you're at home and you, for example, are thinking of writing a book, or you want to get access to BC books, those kinds of things, it's funny when you do a book show, you probably haven't read their books yet. I hope that by the end of the show you're convinced to go and find them, because I think they're very good books. But anyway, if you have questions about that and how you write a book, because I've written a book once and it's tough, and maybe computer programs and that kind of things that you maybe you use this, I don't know. But we'll start with Terrell in Duncan. Hi, Terrell.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I like reading and stuff, and I was just wondering if any of the authors there have, their books, and if it's on a video too. And I've just got another thing too.
Okay.
Okay, I'm like interested in planes and cars and all the rest of that, and I've got some good ideas to get them off the ground. But how would I just go around making the improvements on them?
Okay, I'm not sure what that. I guess one of the questions that I think is interesting is he's talking about possibly getting it on tape or videotape. I mean, I don't know about that, but there's a lot of audio tape possibilities for books nowadays. Yeah, any comments on that? I mean, I don't know how you get a book from book to audio. You have to actually hire an actor or an actress to read it, don't you?
Well, you can practice yourself.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you've got a good voice for that, probably being a prof.
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly that would interest me. The idea that people who perhaps are having sight trouble could hear it, that's excellent. And the other thing, too, is the possibility these days of making it into an animation of some sort. Right. That's also a very attractive proposition.
I guess with a fantasy like that. With your book, Lorraine, how do you pitch it to a publisher? I mean, in his case, if he says he has some ideas about cars and planes and like, how do you pitch to a publisher? This is what I want to write.
Well, you write a dynamic letter to the publisher with a proposal that tells them exactly how you will help them market it and what it's going to look like in the end, and give them a chapter or two, or at least an idea of what it's all about, and talk.
Now, in your case, did you already have a few anecdotes ready to go then?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I see. Okay, and then you
with a proposal.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk to Mike in Victoria. Hi, Mike.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Go ahead.
Very well. I'd like to know your guests whether they've heard of Al Purdy at all. Al Purdy?
Al Purdy.
Canadian poet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, did you have something to share about that? Did you know him?
Yeah, I heard on the grapevine that he might be coming out with a new book. Like he's, I think, in his late 80s and early 90s.
Oh, okay.
And a great Canadian lives on the island here. I was wondering if they heard that he might be coming out with a new
book of poetry. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's a very specific question, though, so that might not be something.
Sadly, I don't know the details on that.
Yeah. You see, what that brings up is how limited our knowledge is of our own industry. Here you are, authors, and you don't know about some of the other authors. We tried to find for the viewers today a little bit of background information on the industry, and it's really tough. It's really tough to say how many authors there are, how many books are published, and anyway, which we know it's a vibrant industry, but beyond that. In your case, Barry, did you find that it was easier for you to get a publisher because you were already an English professor?
I don't think that came into it, but you do hear these horror stories. I mean, I know of some writers who have written their book, and then they've tried to get an agent, and they've actually paid agents, in some cases thousands of bucks, literally, to get, be accepted by them. And sadly, there is an industry that feeds on writers.
Oh, so it's almost like a bit of a con artist.
Oh, absolutely. They'll accept thousands, but in the end, they probably still won't accept your book. And that's just the agent, that's not the publisher.
You're kidding. So people could be out there with a really good story to tell and they can't find a publisher.
Exactly.
I notice in BC's industry more and more there are very small publishing houses getting out some very good books. But nobody knows.
Well, that's the most exciting thing,
yeah,
because that's the way forward for new writers. I think that small presses, I'm with Salal Press, and that is the way forward, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay, and let's talk now. Oh, no, I thought it was Grant in Richmond. Is this Grant in Richmond?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, well, I think somebody's asked a lot of the questions. I've just finished writing a children's book,
Okay.
And I'm trying myself to find out how one goes about finding a publisher and agent. Would you require an agent before a publisher? And are there any good publishers here in BC, or do you have to go elsewhere?
Oh, well, those are all good questions, and certainly that last one answered first. There's some outstanding publishers in BC.
Mm-hmm. There certainly
Yeah. What is your comments on that?
Well, I think that for any writer, it's a matter of doing some research and finding the information you need. There are publications, annual publications that come out about Canadian Writer's Guide, for one, that keeps very up-to-date information about publishers and what they're publishing and how to approach them. It takes research. You have to do your homework.
Some of it you can get at the library.
Sure, a lot of it.
Okay, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about this. And as far as that last caller goes, what I found when I was looking for a publisher of my book is there's a little booklet, and it lists all the publishers with the addresses and the phone numbers and a contact person. And I got it at the library, so that might be something for anyone at home who has a book like that. And usually most publishers are looking for authors of children's books, and we have one we'll talk to a little later in the show. We'll be right back after a break.
Tyabji is brought to you in part by Metro Lexus Toyota, leaders in customer satisfaction.
Eaton's has great holiday deals every week. Want to take a peek? A 25-inch Daewoo stereo TV is $40 off, you see. And only at Eaton's, strike up the band. There's a 27-inch Panasonic TV and stand. Put this sharp view cam under your tree, and a 4-head VCR is yours for free. Plus, this will make you feel fine. You don't pay till $19.99. And there's me, Mr. Magical Moose. Only $9.93.
We all want the mildness of ivory.
Hey.
Oh, you got your ivory. It doesn't have any additives or strong perfumes. That's why I trust the purity of ivory. It's mild on her skin and ours.
Who's got my ivory?
For healthy-looking skin, the look is pure ivory. For a different experience, try Ivory Moisture Care Body Wash with moisturizers.
I knew there had to be a perfectly good explanation why my regular pad didn't work as well at night. It wasn't made to work when I'm lying down. Then I tried new Always Ultra Thin Overnights. They're so thin and so much better because when I lie down, they cover more of the places my regular pad misses. They're longer front to back with wings that cover side to side. So I get better protection where I need it all night long. Very smart. New Always Ultra Thin Overnights. Better coverage for better overnight protection.
What do you love to watch on TV?
For me, it's a nice family show.
Everyone has their favorites.
Home decorating is cool.
Now Rogers gives you more with 16 new channels in one great new package. More of what you want when you want it. Call it selfish. Call it instant gratification.
It's science fiction for me.
Call it MeTV. Order now and you can get MeTV for as little as $5.99 a month. Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 to order.
And today we have authors with us. Our guests are Lorraine Blashill. She's the author of Remembering the 50s, Growing Up in Western Canada. Brian Pettit is the author of The Wellmarangle Kid. He'll probably tell me how I can pronounce that better later. Barry Mathias is author of The Power in the Dark. And Dale Campbell Gates is author of Alien Rescue and other books. And Dale and Brian will join us at the bottom of the hour. But right now we have Barry and Lorraine. And we'll go back to the phones and then we'll ask you a little bit more about your books. And we'll start with Lois in Vancouver. Hi, Lois.
Hi there.
Hi, go ahead.
It's just a suggestion, basically in reference to an earlier caller about his question how to get books perhaps into an audio version. And it just reminded me I had read an article in Time magazine many years ago where they were interviewing Stephen King, and they were asking him about his favorite books. Of course, he has no time to read. So what he did was he paid his two children, they were around 10, 11, 12, 13 in that age range during the summer months to read various books into a tape recorder, and then during his rides into the city or on his travels, he would listen to these books. And it really killed a lot of I don't know if that's a good metaphor, but it killed a lot of stones with one bird, birds with one stone. And I thought it was a fabulous idea to encourage your children to read, and maybe there's even room there for some kind of employment. You don't necessarily, I wouldn't imagine one would necessarily have to get a professional actor per se, but I always thought that was a wonderful idea, and there's no fibbing. I mean, notwithstanding recording over certain sections, he can tell how many hours they've been working at it. I always thought it was a great idea.
Okay, well, thank you. That's actually very interesting to have your kids read into it. And I know that the reason I made the reference to actors is there are companies that will convert, and in that case, they buy the rights to the book and they actually do hire people. But yeah, there's nothing stopping you getting someone else to read it for you. You wanted to make a comment, Barry, about the sorcery and the underlying tone of the Power of the Dark.
That is evident at the beginning of the book.
The sorcery.
But it's very much a small element of the book. The more important element is, as the title indicates, the power in the dark.
Right.
I'm interested in the whole concept of power, which in those days was, of course, to do with blood, who you were born to be. A peasant stayed a peasant.
Like a bloodline.
Right. But a peasant stayed a peasant, and a lord was born a lord. And then there are some people that are worshipped for different reasons, because they believe that they're related to kings or whoever.
Right.
And so that was the interesting thought here. So I start with two young people who don't know each other. They're in their late teens. They don't know each other at the beginning. But as the story goes on, people want to kill them or venerate them because of their past.
I did get that far into your book,
Yes.
actually. It's quite an interesting thing. And Lorena, just before we go back to the phones, in your case, I think something that a lot of people could relate to is how you came to be an author.
Well, I've been writing for years. I used to be a freelance writer before I went to government work, so writing is something I've always done. This particular book was something that I did because I felt very compelled to do it. I was looking back over my life and knew that other people probably were too, and so it had a little more, I was a little more compelled to write it, I guess, than some of the other stuff
To
I
put
had.
the 50s in context.
Yeah, not only in my life, but I thought probably if I was looking for that, other people would be too.
Right. Okay. And I think a lot of people have made reference to that in the last few weeks about how there were rules and now there really aren't. And some of it's an improvement and some of it isn't. Yeah. Ed from Victoria, are you there?
That's you.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, that's you. Go ahead.
Well, the point is this: it's a biography actually of myself, and it's about part of the Holocaust and the forced march from the Ukrainian border to Munich, and incidents that happened on there, and also my meeting with Adolf Hitler.
You met with Adolf Hitler?
Yeah, I was on a working party. I was a prisoner of war for 4 years, you see.
Right.
And I was on a working party in Munich sweeping the streets, and we swept round the railway station. And we had to put the red carpet out, and the first man out was Hitler.
Right.
And he walked right up to me and asked me where my hometown was, where my country was, and everything else. And I saw him 3 months later at Purchase Garden when we were working.
And so you've written about these experiences.
That's right, and also I got very, very close to General Patton.
Right.
Because I was a liaison officer in prisoner of war camps. I spoke German and read and write German fluently at that time.
Right.
And there's not much that didn't go on I didn't know about.
Now, in your case, you're looking for a publisher then?
Yeah, I'm looking for somebody to tell me how to arrange it into a book.
Okay, and have you you have notes right now, and they're not in book form yet?
Oh, no, I've finished the story.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
Okay. Have you approached a publisher at all yet?
Well, I've tried, but I can't find anybody. They all say they don't do it. And
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to let the guest answer that, but that, I mean, it sounds like something that'd be perfect for one of the smaller publishers around.
One of the good things is to join a writers group. They have a lot of connections and people who are already published writers.
Now, are you a member of a writers group?
Yes.
The BC Federation? or?
The Victoria Writers.
Victoria Writers. Well, I think Ed was from Victoria, so how could he contact the Victoria Writers?
Well, I can certainly give him some names. If he gives me the telephone number, I'll ring him back.
Or is it in the phone book?
It's in the phone book,
The
I'm
Victoria
sure.
Writers Association. Yes. And in your case, are you a member of a Writers Association?
No, for years I came to BC from Saskatchewan 6 years ago, and up till then I was very active in writers groups and organizations, and I haven't made that connection here.
Okay. And in a case like that, then how did you find your publisher?
I went to the Canadian Writers Guide and found all the publishers that were local and Vancouver, and I made a list, kind of my preference, where I would like who I would like to publish it, and then I made a few phone calls and just to see if what my idea fit in with what they were publishing at that time.
Right.
And the first one I targeted, so to speak, accepted the proposal and gave me a contract.
Okay, and I think that's one thing that he might want to keep in mind too. And what I find too is if you write out a generic letter with an attachment and send it to, maybe a dozen of the publishing companies, the smaller ones especially are interested in some of the more human stories. Anyway, we are over time for a break. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more of your calls, and we're talking about BC authors.
The Tetley tea folk keep making sure they're as fit as they can be to keep making Tetley Canada's favorite cup of tea. It's up at God to count perforations.
Better not miss even one.
It's taste exercises and obstacle races.
And knowing a round tea bag from 40 paces.
So if you ever stop and wonder why Tetley tea is best, it's because when it comes to taste, Tetley tea folk never...
Eaton's has great holiday deals every week. Want to take a peek? A 25-inch Daewoo stereo TV is $40 off, you see. And only at Eaton's, strike up the band. There's a 27-inch Panasonic TV and stand. Put this sharp view cam under your tree, and a 4-head VCR is yours for free. Plus, this'll make you feel fine. You don't pay till $19.99. And there's me, Mr. Magical Moose. Only $9.93.
Now you don't have to clean your dishes twice. Introducing new Electrosol automatic dishwasher tabs. It's a perfectly measured 2-layered tablet that dissolves completely. The blue layer breaks up stuck-on foods. The white layer gently scrubs your dishes till they shine, giving you dishes that look like this the first time. New Electrosol tabs, the next dimension of clean.
Warham's key tags are a symbol of our work for child amputees. Through the CHAMP program, children receive the artificial limbs they need to lead active lives. As they grow up, the War Amps will be there, providing information, guidance, and so much more. The War Amps. Amputees helping amputees. Thanks to your support of the key tag service, lost key return, now by courier.
We've played musical chairs during the break, so we have two different authors joining us right now. You're taking a look at their books, at the books of all four of the authors actually, and even some boomerangs and some emu eggs. Is that right? There you go. One of our authors right now, author of the Wilmeringel, come on, what is it?
Wilmeringel.
A Wilmeringel Kid.
Just straight up.
Okay.
Wilmeringel.
Brian Pettit. And you brought us some boomerangs and emu eggs.
Right.
Painted emu eggs. Okay.
They were given to me by Aboriginal children in 1961.
They're beautiful. And they're hand painted, obviously.
Yeah. And one is actually carved. It's carved down through the shell.
Wow.
And as you go through different layers, you get to various shades of green.
Isn't that amazing? So that's all been done by kids.
Right.
Young Aboriginal kids. And also Dale Campbell Gates, you're with us, and you're on Salt Spring Island.
That's right, yeah.
And there's this myth that Salt Spring Island is just a big wealth of writers, you know. Nobody really, works 9 to 5. They're all off, in their little...
There are a lot of writers over there, as well as artists and a lot of craftspeople.
Right. Opt-outers. People who look down on those of us who end up in the industrial sites of the world. And thanks both of you for joining us, and you've heard some of the conversation so far. Now you mentioned that you're self-published.
That's right.
Well, why don't you tell us what that means?
Well, it means that I put out a few letters and wasn't able to get anybody to publish my book.
Right.
So the story seemed to be well written, but because it takes place in Australia, they weren't sure that the Western Canadian market would support that, publishers, so I took it on myself. So
and what's the story about?
Well, it's about a young city-bred teacher in Sydney that gets sent to the outback to pioneer a school.
That was you.
That's right.
And now you're a principal of an elementary school?
In Nanaimo, and have been principal for 22 years there.
That's interesting. And how has your book gone as far as sales go?
Great. It's going really good on the island, and Soleil Press is marketing from Victoria here and has got us out into as far as Winnipeg, as far as I know.
Right.
And I'm getting calls from around the province now. It's quite difficult when you are self-published to get
respond
to get
to
the
all of that.
advertising and the marketing done, but I think we're doing very well.
Oh, that's great. And now, Dale, in your case, you've written a number of children's books. Now, I have to ask you this as a parent. We take our kids into bookstores all the time, you know, and we have one rule. They have to buy literature. They can't buy Walt Disney's version of Snow White. They can't, you know, that's just not real. And we have to explain that to them. What are your observations about children's books today?
There's a lot of books out there, and it's really difficult for parents to choose. Librarians have trouble choosing books as well, especially when there's books that are marketed from the big American publishers. They're often perhaps not the best of literature, but because they get a lot of advertising, they put a lot of money into marketing.
They're very accessible.
Yeah, and the kids all hear about them and
that's what they want.
Read them.
Yeah.
And quite often they're disappointed. Even the children themselves are disappointed when they actually get the book home.
Yeah.
From what I've heard.
I noticed these Goosebump series are very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not very impressed with them, but the kids all seem to want to read those ones. What's the difference between what you get there, sort of the mass child fiction, and what you've written?
I haven't actually read one of the Goosebumps. I've started them a couple times, but I have talked to librarians and teachers about them, and they don't think that they're very good quality.
Yeah.
No one, of course, they probably wouldn't tell me anyway, but no one has compared my books to R.L. Stine, although a couple of them, I think, the one you mentioned, Alien Rescue and Night of the Aliens, they're sort of targeted to that same group. But
I found that your books are a lot better written. I mean, I've seen the difference in quality, and you don't even get proper English in some of those other books. You know, they don't get your LYs on your adverbs and stuff. You won an award for the Golden Rose, which is one of the books.
I was shortlisted for the Golden Rose for an award. I actually never did hear who won.
Oh, okay.
That's a complaint I have about Canadian
the book world.
The book world and the media as well. It's very difficult to find out who wins an award, even the BC Book prizes, which are
a fairly major event
big here.
Yeah, in
it's
the
still
book
difficult.
industry.
It's difficult to find out.
It's funny to think of books as being marginalized, but they generally are. We're going to show you now, we actually interviewed Brian Smith. Now, he's not with us today, but Lee McKenzie went to talk to him, and he's written a book that's called Go to Sleep Smiling, and he's quite a character, and you should know that one of the characters in his book, who's actually a real-life person, is She Who Must Be Obeyed, and you'll hear, if you hear him refer to her, I think it comes out to Sumbu. Anyway, and now let's take a look at the story.
Go to Sleep Smiling is intended for you to go to bed with this little book of mine, and in reality, smile before you go to sleep. Oh, every incident in my life I can twist round to see the funny side of it. Big spreads, Brian Smith, meet the author at the Library Hall in Sydney. He's there to talk about self-publishing. He will play the piano for you. He will read from his book. Admission free. Refreshments $1. How many turned up? Yeah. 7. My wife had spent the earth on refreshments. I'm gone.
Would you read a little bit for me?
Now you want your famous...
yeah, page 111.
You know the page, eh? If I may say, I've got to read from my... I have outdoor glasses, those, and I have my other ones, you see. I might do some ad libs, of course. This is typical of me, of course, but I suppose I'll try. I'll be honest. I'll be a good boy. I'm not a good boy, really. I'm a naughty boy. I read you as it is. Yes, you like that. As a motorist, I'm a fair pianist. Not so Sumbo. she is not only a skillful driver, but is extremely careful and courteous on the road. If ICBC were to give out awards, Shumbo would qualify for a gold cup encrusted with diamonds. She's good. She is so mindful of giving the correct signals. She leans out and gives the proper hand signals for either right or left turns. Never trust electronics, she said. Things are looking up, and at 80 I'm having a great time, and I'm glad I've done it. And my next book, now may I put a plug in for my next book, please? It's going to be called Take Me With You, brackets, this book I mean. I think that's all I can say about it, but please buy my book. It'll be an ideal Christmas gift. Okay.
You're quite cheeky.
Yes.
It's quite a character. I hope his wife didn't object to the she who must be obeyed. Let's go back to the phones, and we'll start with Margaret in Victoria. Hi, Margaret.
Hello. I wanted to ask, I'm in the middle of writing a book, St. Joe's to Buckingham Palace. It's a personal story. That's St. Joseph's Hospital in Victoria. And I want to know, is one permitted to use names of people, for instance?
And is this about a true story?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you for the question.
Well, I did. I'm not sure if it was right or not, but it was an autobiography, and the Historical Society in Australia were looking for it, so I just presumed that I would use the correct names, but I'm running into a bit of trouble.
What kind of trouble?
Well, so there's a couple of scenes there where people are wondering whether it's a kiss and tell story. There's a little bit of that, and some of the Aboriginal people are wondering whether I mightn't be sued for some of the things that I've said.
Okay, well, my understanding of the law around this actually is that as long as you are reporting a fact and an event, then you're free to put down what happened. That doesn't mean someone isn't going to try to say that you've distorted it or whatever, but it's only when you're trying to fictionalize something from a true story that you can run into some trouble. Anyway, so, but probably if you're worried, you should
Well, truth is the
call
best
a lawyer.
defense against libel, that's what I've been told as well.
Yeah, that's right. Truth is the best defense. Okay, let's talk to Norma now from Comox. Hi, Norma.
Hi, Judy. Love your expanded program. An hour was necessary.
Yes.
Would just like to ask a couple of questions of your authors. The last one referred to doing your own homework, which I found a bit arrogant. If you really want to know some procedures about self-publishing, the how you get it together, what kind of format is required to send into a publisher or self-publishing.
Right.
And also about illustrators. Is that required? If you're sending into a publisher, would you also include illustrations at the time? What form does that take? Obviously, it's not just a computer printout, or is it?
Right, okay, well, those are good questions. It actually depends on what kind of publication, but what kind of answers do you have for that?
Arrogance must be an Australian trait. I hear that a lot. Now
you're going to get Australians writing to you, you know that.
I asked a few printers. I got the quote for prints. I found out where the best price was. I prepared my own pages to a print-ready format so that when I sent them to Friesens in Winnipeg, all I had to do was photograph them there and the book was done. My cover, I took the boomerangs and a few other memorabilia down and said to a photographer, photograph this, and he gave me a photograph. I selected that as being the cover of the book. I selected the colors, green and gold, because it was Australia's colors.
Right.
So, you know, the copyright, everything was print ready. It just went to the printers and was done. Now it's back to me, boxes and boxes of books in my bedroom.
So you're paying for it up
I'm
front.
paying for everything. And so now we're trying to get it out and market it.
Right.
And that's where Claire comes in.
Okay, now in a case like that, as far as illustrations go, if you're dealing with a publisher, because I think she was talking about the two different situations, then it depends on the publisher. Some publishers will provide an illustrator for you, and then some will want you to go and get one yourself. It depends, I guess, how low-key or high-end you're going with
And once you decide on the size of your page, you would have your illustration within that frame.
Okay. Do you have a comment?
No, I was just I wanted to say that with children's books, the publishers generally do choose the illustrator themselves. I've had people ask me this before, and they wonder if they should maybe get an illustrator and get it all set up and then send it to the publisher. But it's usually better, unless you do the illustrations yourself, to just send your manuscript in, and they usually have people that they call that that will do the illustrations.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll be talking about publishing in BC, and we'll ask them, are they making any money at this? We'll be right back.
Eaton's has great holiday deals every week. Want to take a peek?
For the holidays, Eaton's is shaving up to $30 off all bronze shavers.
And there's me, Mr. Magical Moose. Only $9.93.
I knew there had to be a perfectly good explanation why my regular pad didn't work as well at night. It wasn't made to work when I'm lying down. Then I tried new Always Ultra Thin Overnights. They're so thin and so much better because when I lie down, they cover more of the places my regular pad misses. They're longer front to back with wings that cover side to side. So I get better protection where I need it all night long. Very smart. New Always Ultra Thin Overnights. Better coverage for better overnight protection.
We all want the mildness of ivory.
Hey.
Oh, you got your ivory.
It doesn't have any additives or strong perfumes. That's why I trust the purity of ivory. It's mild on her skin and ours.
Who's got my ivory? For healthy-looking skin, the look is pure ivory. For a different experience, try Ivory Moisture Care Body Wash with moisturizers.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey! Island farms, hooray! Oh, what fun it is to ride in a Holstein open sleigh.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Hey, don't switch that dial, because this is going to make you smile.
For the holidays, Eaton's is taking $50 off the new Hoover Wind Tunnel Vacuum and the Hoover Steam Vac.
And there's me, Mr. Magical Moose. Only $9.93.
So we're talking about the BC book industry. We have some authors with us today, and now we have to ask the burning question. Okay, do you become a millionaire at this? I mean, can you make a living? Do you make money at it? What's the financial impact?
You have to ask Dale. I'm not.
Well, you put all your money into it to self-publish.
I'm just trying to get mine back.
Yeah, and in your case?
There's, at least so far, there's not a lot of money in children's books, especially.
Now, in your case too, now you've published how many children's books?
9.
Nine
so far,
altogether.
yeah.
Okay, so that's over a period of time. And your books, I think, have a little more value to them. I mean, people are always saying, oh, some of the messages we're getting through our books and through the media, and whether it's Goosebumps or Power Rangers, the kids are being bombarded with things that have no messages in them. So here you're doing something of quality. You're a BC author. It's got a good message in it. How easy is it for you to get into the elementary schools?
I do a lot of school visits.
Right.
I was just up in Courtney Comox last week, and that's a great way to contact the kids and to talk to them, and they're always excited about having an author come to visit. But I find that quite often they aren't even aware of my books until I get there, and then of course they want to read them. So that's a good way to get the news
books in the
out,
school,
get
yeah.
the books into the schools.
Is there a purchasing priority or anything by the government to sort of say, okay, well, let's get some, because one of your books, The Golden Rose, that was shortlisted, actually takes place near Hope, BC.
Yes.
And there's a really neat scene in there with a bear attacking the vegetable garden and a little girl almost getting killed, and it's a very good dynamic of the family, coming into play there. And I thought, geez, I think our kids would really like to read this, but where would they find your book?
The best way, and unfortunately that seems to be the only way, is to be aware of the book first, then ask for it in the bookstore.
And if you don't know it's there?
No, but quite often it won't even be there.
Yeah.
Before I went up to Courtney, some of the teachers wanted to read my first, the Night of the Aliens and Alien Rescue are the first book and then a sequel. So they wanted to read the first book before I came. They went to the bookstores and it wasn't available. They would have to order it, and it would take 3 weeks, and
Right.
by that time there wouldn't be time to read it.
It's almost
so I
ironic
find
because
that, yeah, I
it's
find
very
that very
frustrating.
frustrating. You have to actually go there and say, "These are my books," and would you be interested?
And frequently
in
they'll just
having
say, "Oh no, just we've
Well-
got enough books and we can't overstock our shelves." And
That's right. No, they're usually very receptive when you actually go in. They'll order maybe 2 or 3 copies.
then you better hope that they sell them. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So what would you say to people who are, I mean, that's kind of discouraging in a way. Is there a way to try to make it so that people can know a little bit more about your books? Like I know that the festival that takes place in Vancouver, the book festival where they close off the street and thousands of people show up for that. I mean,
We're
that's
down the
been
street.
really good. Yeah, and in Victoria, I know that the BC Book Awards are coming up in the spring. And that's going to also profile a lot of literary nonfiction. How do people plug into this, and do you think it's worth it for people to make that kind of effort? I mean, what are they going to get out of it? I mean,
well, you have to advertise. You you have to have the exposure. You have to be able to go somewhere to do a reading. I think you need to put something in BC Book World to advertise in that.
BC Book World is a publication that is given away free.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good publication.
But it would seem to me that the publishers, see, being self-published, I don't know, I'm doing it all myself, it would seem that they might have more dollars to do that and perhaps be able to put you on the road of touring somewhere, but you really have to make personal appearances, I think.
Yeah, and even that's hard. I mean, we saw that Brian Smith saying how they took all the trouble and they had a book signing and 7 people showed up. And what he probably doesn't realize is that's not a bad turnout, actually, Brian. You know, some people say 7 people. Wow, that's great. Yeah. You know, how did you write a children's book? How do you even outline that?
Most of the books that I've written, actually I've sort of written it in 2 different ways. Most of the books that I have written, though, the idea has been something that's been in my mind for a while, probably because of an experience that I've had. In the case of the 2 that I did that are science fiction, it was an experience that my son had. I always like to tell the kids about that because it was something that happened that kind of frightened him when he was home by himself. There were some lights that went by the window.
Oh, you're kidding, so it's partially based on what he saw?
Yes. It begins with what happened to him, just the first page or 2, and then from there it kind of I kind of went over it in my mind for quite a long time before I sat down and wrote it. My other books, I've done a couple of young adult historical fiction, and they're just because I'm so interested in BC history. It's a really interesting history.
Well, and I know that it's a lot easier for kids to read historical fiction than it is to try to wade through some of our history textbooks, at least in my opinion. Some of them are kind of dry. Anyway, we have to take a break. We'll be back with more. Well, we'll take some of your calls, actually, if you have some calls. I've been kind of hogging the time here talking to you guys. We're talking about authors of publishing and writing, and we'll be right back.
The Tetley tea folk keep making sure they're as fit as they can be to keep making Tetley Canada's favorite cup of tea. It's up to God to count perforations.
Better not miss even one.
It's taste exercises and obstacle races.
And knowing a round tea bag from 40 paces.
So if you ever stop and wonder why Tetley tea is best, it's because when it comes to taste, Tetley tea folk never...
If you could spend your time surfing instead of waiting. If you could see your newborn grandson on your computer tonight. If you have Wave from Rogers, you can access the wonders of the internet 10 times faster than a conventional phone line. And because Wave comes through cable, it won't tie up your telephone. Call 1-800-THE-WAVE for more information.
So soft, you love it. Just one touch of it, you know down it does it. So soft on your skin, just come on in.
Clothes can be stiff without a fabric softener, but even when you hang them to dry indoors, Ultra Downy leaves clothes feeling softer with all that freshness.
You love it, only Downy does it. Come on in to Downy.
For great value, get the new Downy Starter Kit now.
It's not just the wind or the cold. One of the harshest environments can be the inside of a diaper, where wetness can upset the delicate pH. Pampers Baby Dry can help. It turns the blue liquid clear as it lowers the pH. And it pulls that wetness away to help keep skin dry and healthy. Wetness can upset the delicate pH in a diaper, and Pampers Baby Dry helps control it. Help protect their skin from wetness with Pampers Baby Dry. Pamper the skin they're in.
Coming up tomorrow, our political panel returns. John Twigg and Mike Gagan, and we'll talk about recall in the North and how that might impact the government. Kids and Frogs on Thursday, trying to prevent a development. Gilles Duceppe joins us on Friday. That should be interesting to find out his take on unity discussions. And Paul Hellyer will join us on Monday, talking about his book on the multilateral agreement on investment. And he may also be joined by someone who was protesting APEC to talk about their experiences there, sort of two sides of the same coin. So that's going to be a very different kind of show. And we were just talking during the break, and I said that in BC, it's very hard to get information about the BC book industry. But I keep hearing that we're the best read province in Canada, that more people in BC read books than anywhere else in Canada. I wanted to ask you, Brian, about some of the stories in your book, because you talk about the Aboriginal people in the outback of Australia, which most Canadians, even if you've been to Australia, have not spent a lot of time in the outback.
No, I wouldn't think so.
I would think. I don't know.
It's quite out of the way. I hadn't spent any time at all there myself. I quite resented being sent there, in fact, for 3 years. It was a job that I had to do for the government. But my life has revolved around that experience, and to the point that I've written about it because it impacted upon me greatly at a young age.
Because in Australia, if they educate you to be a teacher, then you have to go and serve in the outback and do a few years as a teacher.
Well, I had a scholarship. The government paid for me to be trained for 2 years, and I owed them 3 years in return.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I'm not sure if it's still like that, but they still have to get people into those isolated posts somehow.
Right. And you met some of the Aboriginal people who gave you the emu eggs that you were showing us.
Yep.
And there was a story that you were going to share with us.
Well, there's a lot of stories, really. It's not a book of superstition, but certainly there was a time when somebody had been killed in a car accident, and I had to take the word to the camp, the Aboriginal camp, and that was quite scary for me. I didn't need me to tell anybody that somebody had died. And the Aboriginals, there was a lot of sound and woomera sounds.
Woomera sounds?
Well, stick sounds and clicking and chanting and screaming. And I had only just driven under the camp to tell somebody that this fellow had finally passed away in the hospital. And this young boy that's very important to my book came out and threw his arms up and told me I better get out of there fairly quickly.
And why? Because they were already
they were into something else.
Oh.
Yeah, that wasn't for me.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This all took place in 1961, and it's interesting going through the 50s there. I'm probably at the end of that and before the 60s, I'm thinking, because it was a different time as well.
Mm-hmm.
All the values were there, were just the television, Father Knows Best, and everything like that.
Yeah, that's all in the Remembering the 50s book. Yeah. In this case, though, where I've heard stories that the Australian Aboriginal people can communicate, and it's hard for you to know how they're communicating. Is that what you're referring to then?
Yes. The mental telepathy, there was one full-blooded Aborigine in particular, and I have another scene where they're playing cards and he's taken this hawker for 400 pounds. 3 times the hawker keeps borrowing money thinking he's going to get it back from these primitive Aboriginals.
Right.
And I suggest in the book that the Aboriginal was reading his mind as well as his cards in any event,
right.
and knew exactly what he was doing.
And he wasn't going to win. Okay, we're going to take a call from Crystal in Campbell River. Hi, Crystal.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Yes, I'm wondering who to contact for publishing of fairy tales, because when I look in the reader's guide, they want nonfiction or fiction or, all the different things, but a lot of them say no fairy tales.
Right.
And yet they seem to be really popular with young children, and I've written a lot, and I don't seem to be finding the markets for them.
Well, that's a good question, actually. Dale, yours isn't really a fairy tale, but you have sort of science fiction children's tales.
That's right. I think the best thing to do would be to go to your local library or your bookstore and look for similar types of books that are perhaps other fairy tales for the same age group, maybe the same or similar length, and make a note of those publishers, and then write a query letter or go ahead and send your manuscript to those people, because those are the ones that are going to be interested.
Now, I don't know if we can bring Barry into this. I know you're way over there, Barry, but you wrote something that's sort of like a fairy tale in a way. Did you have a hard time finding a publisher? Can I do this, Kevin, or are you going to get mad at me for it? Yeah? Okay, good.
Well, having heard the nightmare that some of my friends had been through, I really approached the whole business with a certain sort of hesitancy.
Right.
And having completed the book, I heard of Salal Press, sent my book in, or 3 of my chapters, and they agreed to read the whole book. And then after that, they said, fine, we'll publish it.
So
and I was just so amazed by this that I mean, it was a very nice compliment, but it was such a relief. And you thought, wow, it isn't that difficult after all.
Okay.
And so I think, to sum it up, there's a certain amount of luck. And if you're lucky, then you hit the right person at the right time.
Right. Okay, I think that's a good way to put it.
The Writer's Digest is still a really good thing to look through.
Right.
If the callers look through that.
Where can you get a copy of the Writer's Digest?
At any bookstore.
Oh, okay, good.
It's about $40 though.
$40?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And I guess you have to say that's only the first chunk of what you're going to end up spending in your case. Just how many books did you publish? How many copies?
1,500.
1,500 copies.
Yeah.
Now, just
cost me $6,500.
$6,500. Yeah. Okay.
And if I'd done more, of course, it would have been less. I mean, there is second printing now. They're $3.88 a book now for the first 1,000, and $1.52 for beyond that.
Okay, so the cost is going down because you're going in higher in volume.
Yeah, and I own all the plates.
Right.
So if somebody takes over the rights to put the book into Australia, you know, I own the plates.
So they'll have to go through you. Is that what
yeah.
you mean? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, you know what? We're actually out of time. There's still so many things we could talk about. I want to thank all of you for joining us. It was interesting. And I hope that we'll see a higher profile to BC Books. And hey, it's almost Christmas time, as Brian Smith said. You know, what a great Christmas present is a BC book. And you may be surprised how good they are. We're going to show you now how you can contact us. Tyabji, 780 Kings Road, Victoria, BC, V8T 5A2. Fax us at 250-389-1226. You can email us, tyabji@wic.ca. And our internet website, www.checktv.com, has information from this and previous shows, including Real Audio. And we'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, don't switch that dial, because this is going to make you smile.
For the holidays, Eaton's is taking $50 off the new Hoover Wind Tunnel Vacuum and the Hoover Steam Vac.
And there's me, Mr. Magical Moose. Only $9.93.
America, millions of you have skinny hair. Stop hiding it.
From Conair Volume Control, you've got the Big Curl Setter. 5 soft surface jumbo rollers with super clips go from skinny to full of body.
Nobody's bigger in hair than Conair.
America, millions of you have skinny hair. Well, stop hiding it. From Conair, get the Big Curls Hot Air Curling Iron and Brush. Styles as it dries, brushes in volume. Nobody's bigger in hair than Conair.
I'm never at home. Why would I leave my phone there?
What do you get with Amigo Digital? Every month you get 100 anytime minutes and 100 first incoming minutes free.
Yeah, I'm free.
You get call display.
Staying in touch doesn't mean staying in.
And oh yeah, there's no long-term contract.
I call the shots.
And you get it all for just $19.95 a month. Amigo Digital. It goes with you.
Unexpected treasures await you at the Gallery Shop in the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria. See unique items from around the province and around the world. The Gallery Shop offers an extraordinary shopping experience away from the hustle and bustle, where parking is free and plentiful. With prices starting from $2, you'll find everything from stocking stuffers and home decorations to major gifts. Life is about giving. The Gallery Shop at the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria just makes it affordable.
Eaton's has great holiday deals every week. Want to take a peek?
For the holidays, Eaton's is shaving up to $30 off all bronze shavers.
And there's me, Mr. Magical Moose. Only $9.93.
We're still feeling the aftershock of what happened when the government claimed they had a balanced budget. Right now, there are people in court who are trying to get this government thrown out of office. And we heard recently that petitions have been tabled in the north for recall of 2 MLAs. We'll talk about the impact of this tomorrow. Today, of course, we were talking about BC authors and some of the books, and there are so many other authors who didn't join us today and so many other books that are on the market right now. And I guess one thing that I've noticed about our own industry is we almost have to be self-promoting in BC. We have to actually seek out some of our authors and look for some of those books. And some of the best children's books on the market are actually written by local authors, but it will take some research to find. Well, it's an industry in its infancy. All we can do is keep plugging away at it and keep our fingers crossed. And I hope that some of you do choose BC authors for Christmas presents. I'm Judy Tyabji, and we'll see you tomorrow.
It's here, where you can't relax. We make sure of it. Tuesdays. Check TV.